What's up, guys? Today on the show, we have our pastor, Brad Parkhurst. Thank you for coming, Brad.
Thanks a lot. Very happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. So, Brad, we kind of shared last week when we were doing our show when it was just us three talking. We shared the really cool story about how Alex and Brad met that day in Costco, which changed our life drastically. So we had the thought, like, let's just bring Brad on here and talk about life, talk about everything. We're definitely driven more toward business and entrepreneurship, but not only is Brad my pastor, but he's also my gym and sauna partner. So we've been getting good time in the sauna together talking, and it's so crazy to me how similar entrepreneurship and starting a business is to starting a church.
Sure.
So I think we can pull so much out of this. So man, thank you for coming.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Thanks a lot, man. Yeah.
So I guess I know your story, but kick us off. Tell our listeners a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, and how you got to Georgia.
Okay. Well, I was born in Northern California, up in the San Francisco area, and that's where my family was at that time. And got to about 8 years old. My dad got a job with American Airlines. They transferred him out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, from California. So it was a major culture shock for my family, for sure, for my mom especially. And we got out there to Oklahoma and it's really where my home is. So any Sooner fans out there, man, Boomer all the way. So
cut that part. Cut that.
So spent the growing up years there in a city called Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It's not a little Indian village like it sounds like. It's a good sized town. I met the Lord at a young age there, was baptized in a church there, and then graduated from Broken Arrow High School and went to the University of Tulsa there, and spent the first couple years studying marketing.
Okay.
And I was going to go into advertising, did an internship at an advertising agency, and really felt like that's where I was headed. And one day, the youth pastor from my church just kind of stopped me in the hall and said, "Hey, are you called to the ministry?" And I was like, I don't know. I can't say yes. I can't say no. I've never really even thought about that. And he needed an intern to work in with their middle school kids. And so I was working in the drive-through at the busiest bank in Oklahoma at that time, which was a terrible job. And so I was like, yes, you're going to pay me about what I'm making here. I'll do it. So I spent 2 years working with our middle school kids there at the church. And there was a moment after those 2 years, I just graduated college, and we were sitting up on a campground up in Colorado, Camp I'd Rahaji.
Okay.
I'd rather have Jesus. I'd Rahaji. It's pretty cool. We were sitting up there, took our kids up to youth camp up there in Colorado, and was just like, realized this was the Lord's path for me. This is what he wanted me to do with my life. And so shortly after that, met Angie, and we dated for about 6 months, got married about 6 months later, and moved down to Fort Worth, Texas, Southwestern Seminary down there in Texas, and spent a couple years there. Got a divinity degree down there, and basically just a theology degree. And then spent 7 years in Louisiana, down in Sulphur and Lake Charles, serving as youth pastor. And then got a call from a good friend of mine that asked me to come on to the youth ministry staff at a church over in Kennesaw. And so we came all the way out here, which was really a blessing for us because Angie's mom and sister, their families lived out here at that point. And so that was really cool. That was a draw for us to get on out here. And so then worked there 5-6 years and in youth pastoring. So ended up doing youth ministry for about 20 years and total. And then I just kind of felt like there was some time where I was like not recovering from lock-ins very well because I was getting older. I was like, and camps were like killing me. They were destroying me. I know we talked about you being at camp not too long ago and just what that did to you. And you were younger than me at that point.
Yeah.
So I said to my pastor, I said, hey, if there's anything else that you would say, man, Brad would be really good at that. I said I might be ready to move into something like that because it's a big church. And so just a couple weeks later, we decided that we were going to plant a Dallas location of that church. So that was something that was right. It was going to be in my kids' elementary school, Abney Elementary. I know that's where your daughter goes. And so we came out, did that for a couple years, and it was a video campus. Just really didn't click. I don't know if Paulding County just wasn't ready for a video campus. So we at that point just kind of mutually agreed, hey, we need to make a change here, and we need to go and we need to start something that's just a standalone church. And so that's when Vertical Life Church started, and that was 11 plus years ago. So we loaded in and out of a I know you wanted to mention the church planning and the entrepreneurship and stuff, and it's very true how planting a church is you got to have that entrepreneurial spirit in it. Because we loaded in and out almost all of our stuff every single week for 5 years. You come in 5 a.m., get it
on
all
a Sunday
set up.
morning, 5 a.m. You're rolling in,
taking it to the school.
Setting
it up, having service, packing it up, taking it back.
Hoping people show up.
Hoping that it's and we didn't want to do anything halfway. We didn't want to just throw a couple chairs out there. I mean, we did full production with lighting and everything because we wanted to put a good if you call it a product or a good a representation of our hearts out there, and to really present Jesus as best as we could. And so we did that for about 5 years. And you want me to keep going and talk about how we get to today?
Well, I think how, just to pause there, because I think it's so cool, because I actually went to lunch with the guy who did the church camp that you were talking about the other day, and he's a church plant that moved here from Tennessee. So we were just talking about, and he was telling me the statistics around how short term a lot of church plants actually are. And it's very similar to business startups. If you don't have the right, he said, basically you've got like a short window to get the right team put together, to get all that in place, or it's probably going to fail.
That's right.
He was basically saying how challenging it is. So in those early days, when you took that leap of faith to like, man, I know I've been under the protection of this larger church for so long. Now I'm going to go out and do my own thing. And it was kind of gradual the way y'all did it because of the video. But then when Vertical Life is starting, how did that feel in those moments was there a lot of anxiety, a lot of, walk me through that.
It's, we had we came to the people that were there for the video campus. And there wasn't too many there at that point. And we said, hey, this is what's happening. Next week, it's going to be different. And we had some people that stayed on with us. They were like, yeah, let's go. Some people that went back to the bigger church, some people that just went somewhere else. And so that first Sunday we had about 60, I think we had 65 there that first Sunday.
That's pretty good.
And so at that point, you're like, okay, we're going all in here, because you're right. We've been under this protection. We got to go all in. And we just, man, you just trust the Lord. And you're just like, we know that this is what we're supposed to do. The Lord has just put this on our hearts, that this is what we are to do. And if he says that we're supposed to do this, he's going to provide the way to make that happen. He's going to pave the way. To make that happen. And so
I have a question. So basically, when you're in the process, the video deal is not working, and you're sitting there and you're like, man, maybe we should plant a church. So it's not just create a 501c3 and start preaching. There's a lot more to it than that. So did you have to go through that separately after you divided from that church and started Vertical Life? Did you have to create your own nonprofit and then start the team that way? And so did all that just take place like within
a month?
Wow.
Okay. It was fast.
That's quick.
It was fast. And the first day of Vertical Life was like June 1st, which is the worst day of the year to plant a church because everybody's going on vacation. Everybody's through it's summer. And so, but that's where the Lord had us. So we had some key people that were saying, hey, we're in this. we're gonna be with you. We're gonna give. We're gonna serve. We're gonna, and so we knew that that we weren't walking into it completely on our own. That we had a team. We had, I was the only full-time staff member at that point. We had one other young guy that came in who was full-time, and then another part-timer, and we just went with it. And after the first month, all the bills were paid. Everything. We were in the black. Didn't go into the red that first month, and there was $11 in the bank account. And so at that point, we kind of coined the phrase JEJIT, which is just enough, just in time. And we just that's been the story of Vertical Life, is that the Lord has always provided for us. No one has ever gone without a paycheck. We never have not paid the rent. It's always been just enough, just in time. The Lord has provided. And sometimes it gets a little bit further than that, where he begins to provide in a little bit more of abundance, but then sometimes it just stays at JEJIT. And so we celebrate that. And that's not a scarcity mindset. I'm like, Lord, you're just giving us just enough. It's like, man, I'm celebrating this.
Yes.
That this is, you have delivered what we have needed right at the right time every single time. Yes. And we're excited about that. And it's a good way to live, because it keeps you from getting kind of like full of yourself, Right. Like if you start making a lot of money in business, or your businesses start doing really well, et cetera, your mind and your heart can drift from the one that you are dependent on. You can find that it's a fight to keep it back, right? To keep depending, keep walking, keep trusting. And so he just keeps reminding us, hey, I'm in control here. Yes. Y'all just keep doing. I'm in control here. I'm taking care of you.
That's so good. So, and our business, I mean, we would agree we can relate to that just enough, just in time model.
Yeah.
And when we came together, we all three agreed that we were going to give this business to Jesus and let him do it. So we kind of took a spiritual approach to our business in that sense of, we're going to go into this and just trust God and know that he's going to deliver. In 3 years, it's amazing how he just keeps showing up time and time again.
Yeah.
So I would, in this moment, I would just like plead with you guys to put God in the center of your businesses. I mean, he should be the center of everything that we do, not just our, walk with Christ. I mean, he should be not just our relationship when we're at church. It should be
your kids, your wife,
everything,
your family.
every single relationship, every single thing that you do in life. If you can keep him in the center,
that's right.
I think you can experience what we're talking about here, because it strengthens your faith so much when you go through things, and time again, he just shows up and delivers time and time again. So in the early days, $11 in the bank account.
Yeah.
I know how that can be from a stress standpoint, because I've been there. So would you say it was super stressful in the beginning, or was it you were just so busy that you didn't even have time to stop and think about the stress?
I think you take it like, okay, let's go another month.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's run this back. Do it again.
Yeah.
Because we made it. And I think you start before you know it, you're stacking months, right? And then you're stacking years. And what you said about church plants not making it, I think I've read that 2 out of 10 plants make it for 5 years or more.
Wow.
That's it. So there's that many that fail. And so, for me, I don't know, looking back, I feel like, maybe I should, I guess maybe from a human perspective, I should have been a lot more stressed out. And I think maybe there were some more people maybe around me that were a little bit more stressed out. For me, I was like, this is what we're doing. And this is what the Lord's asked us to do. And he's just going to take care of us. And I don't know if that's just that special just gift of faith for that time, because that hasn't always been the case. I'm not trying to say that I'm have all this faith all the time, but in that moment, the Lord just said, I think he just allowed that stuff to just dissolve off, so that the focus could be where the focus needed to be.
Good. And I can relate to that.
And I love what you said too. I mean, whether you have a business and you're living in abundance, or whether you are barely scraping by paying rent each month, I mean, whether it's personal or business, whatever. I mean, if you keep that faith at the center of your household, at the center of your life, from personal experience, I mean, it really makes getting through these times a lot easier, and also gives you a redemptive, but it's basically, it gives you a reason for why you're going through things.
Yeah.
It gives me a reason for everything. I love that you said that.
Yeah, there's been so many times, like, we can probably tell stories about how stuff would be tight, and then all of a sudden this would happen, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So he's provided for us.
We're going to get into a really cool story with that.
Well, I think I like how you guys are saying that the Lord, that not just keeping the Lord number one, but keeping him the center.
That's
you know,
right.
he should not be number one on your priority list. Like, I got God, I got my family, I got my business, etc. It shouldn't be number one on your priority list. He should be the paper that your priority list is written on, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Everything
Foundation.
everything comes in. He is a part of everything.
Yes.
And that's how,
yes.
I think that's how you continue to walk in that dependence on him.
You bring your
So
family
true.
to God. You bring your work to God. You
Yeah.
bring whatever you have to God.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it works.
Because if he's number one, he can drop.
That's
But
right.
if he's what you write the priorities on, then he always stays the same.
That's
He's
so
the
true.
constant.
And I think a lot of times you said something that's so true. A lot of times when you find that success, that's when the ego slips in and you start, a lot of times, I mean, you'll start drifting if you're not really careful. So it's where I want to get, and it's still it's an uphill climb to get there, but I want to be content no matter what the circumstances are. You know, like you said, I relate so much to, you know, the last 9 years of my life being self-employed can be stressful in itself. Just when you're dependent on, I got to do something in order to eat. I don't have a company, so it can be super stressful. But at the same time, it's like, that's what God called me to do. So a lot of people ask me, like, are you stressed out? I'm like, I'm really not. And I think for me, it's having a great team around us that has helped so much. And I know, you know, we kind of shared our story of how we came to Vertical Life, I guess, in year 12, I guess it was. So we got to see, after y'all have already been through
more of the finished product.
You know, I got to talking to Carson. His son actually is really close. We work together, and I love Carson so much. And when he started working with us, I really got to ask him questions about the very beginning. And he was telling us about the setup. He was like, it was a grind, man. He was like, because we're out there at, you know, 5 a.m. unloading chairs out of a trailer for several years. So how long? You said it was 5 years before y'all got to the building. And did y'all go from the school to the building that we're in now?
Yes. Yeah. After about 4 years, we started getting antsy. We're like, okay, we gotta, because there's something about a church that's mobile that doesn't communicate, hey, we're here to stay.
Yeah.
You know? And so, and you know where Abney's on a side road off another side road. And so there wasn't a lot of visibility. And so we started saying, you know, really feeling like, you know, the Lord was going to open up something for us to be in a permanent spot. And so we found this Ace Hardware building there in the New Hope area of Dallas. And it was a big strip center, had Dollar General on one side, and Ace Hardware had built their own building and moved out. Well, the owner of that building really liked his building. And so he was wanting $12,000 a month just for that space that we're currently in. And we're paying $2,000 at the school. And we're 100 and something people at this point. It's not, you know, we can't do $12,000 a month.
Yeah.
And so it was perfect location. It was, you know, it was great, but we couldn't do it. And so we went another year, and still nobody had leased it out. And so he finally said, well, just make us an offer. And so we said, how about 6? And he said, okay. And so, so patience really paid off there, waiting for the right moment to move. And I mean, that's a great business principle too, isn't it? Just waiting for that right moment. That is correct. And those things just kind of come together. And so, so we basically walked into that space, giant white box. I mean, you can imagine, think about what an Ace Hardware looks like. There's just 4 walls, and pretty nasty because it was a hardware store. And so we came in and we started the fundraising. This is part of just a couple of the stories that I just want to make sure that I tell, just of the Lord's just straight up provision. So we start building it out, and we kind of just discover that the Lord had put the right people in the right place at the right time. So we had a guy that worked at one of the carpet factories up in Dalton. So he's like, man, I can get you all the flooring that you need. Here's all this stuff. It's just for free. Here's all this, you know, all that the big lobby space, that was $14,000 retail to buy all that product, and he gave it to us for $1,400.
Wow.
And so, and then we have a guy in the church who lays floors, and so he comes and he's, I'm going to do this. We have a lady that works for a sign company. We have, all just these different people that chip in. Our contractor. There's a guy who's a contractor, so he did all the contracting for free. We had Builders for Christ come in and build all the walls, and so I mean, it was just incredible to see the Lord just really put these pieces together. And one quick story is we get in, we celebrate that, hey, we moved in, it's all done, and we don't owe anybody anything, and that's awesome. We're good. And about 2 weeks into it, after we'd moved in, 2 weeks, this was right around Christmas, right before church one Sunday morning, Rachel, my assistant, comes in and she has this look on her face and she says, this is not good. And I said, what? What's not good? She said, there's a bill sitting in the mailbox. And it was for one of the, I can't remember what it was, the lighting or the AC or whatever it was. And it was for $6,300. And that doesn't seem like that's that big a deal, but we were back at JEJIT. And I said, well, we don't have $6,300, so we're going to just trust the Lord that he'll provide it. And I said, let's just not do anything with it right now. Maybe it was paid through the contractor. If we still owe them money, they're going to let us know that we still owe them money. So a couple weeks later, she comes back. She says, hey, I got that bill again, and $6,300. I said, all right, well, let's just pray that the Lord's going to provide it. So we go through the morning services, and she comes to me right after church, and she's just got tears in her eyes. And she's like, I can't believe this. And I said, what happened? And she told me that one of our people that are regular givers, but they had, the story we found out was they had cashed out an IRA or something like that and had given $7,000 extra above what they normally give. And so 7,000 is important, y'all. It's important because year one of this church, even when it was hardcore JEJIT, we decided we are going to give 10% away of everything that comes in. So if a dollar comes in, 10 cents goes out. It goes to missionaries across the world. It goes to someone who needs help with their rent. It goes to, help and pay a medical bill, whatever it is, whatever we need. We can give it to a local ministry. We support a lot of local ministries. 10% of the money is going to go out. And so 7,000, 10%, 700 goes out, 6,300 to pay the bills.
Good grief.
JEJIT, right? And so
that's wild.
So God is so good and he's so precise as well.
Yeah.
He's just going to give you, and he's going to, so that he can, I call those like God winks.
Absolutely.
Like he's like, I got you.
I got you.
I'm just looking at you. I'm still here.
Yeah, you felt pretty good about your decisions up until that point. Whenever you got that $7,000, you thought, man, I'm right where I need to be right now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
exactly.
Good.
So
good.
And I love that story about all the people at church or that were attending the church where they get you the flooring that, we relate that was obviously within church, but I mean, in business, to relate it to business, I mean, that's networking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is straight up networking. That's what we do. I mean, Rob, Brent, and I, we spend a lot of time meeting with people, talking to people, and just over the past few years, we talk about networking a decent amount just because it blows my mind. I mean, think about it. Yeah. I said hey to you, and it's like now I'm sitting in your church every Sunday, and it's like that networking piece is huge. And so I just wanted to relate that to, if you're out there and talking to people or meeting people or going to church with people, I mean, find out what they do, man. You never know how you can help someone or how they can help you in return.
Yeah,
so true.
Absolutely.
And so I also, something that I kind of mentioned it earlier in the intro about how through our conversations in the sauna, we have, 15 minutes every day. It's kind of cool. I tell them all the time, I'm like, man, I need to send you some money for like my therapy sessions. Because it's kind of cool to be locked in a room for 15 minutes.
That's right. We do get into some stuff, don't we?
But I've learned so much how similar, operating a church, there is a business side to operating a church. Mm-hmm. So I think that in order for a church to be successful, you really do have to have somebody, and it may not be the pastor. There's a lot of people behind him that support us, but you have to have a good business mind to do what you do. To run a church the way that you do, you have to have a good business mind. Was that something you were aware of going into? Did they prepare you for that? And tell me how you relate to that, because you hear our side of things and it does relate. So tell me your side of how the church does have a business.
Yeah, sure. When I was in seminary, we didn't talk about anything having to do with the business side of the church at all. It was all, just learning theology and all that kind of stuff and practical things, but they didn't get that practical into finances and all that stuff. And so yes, when you say that it does operate like a business in a way, it does. I think that my marketing degree that I have helps, certainly, just kind of moves my mind like that a little bit. But what you said is true about, man, it's so important that I am so surrounded by, we have 5 elders, and they're all out, working into the business world, and they're smart guys. And I so depend on them, and many times hand things off to them where I'm like, I don't even need to worry about this. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about this. We got this. And so that's a true blessing. But yeah, I think that it's interesting because it does operate like a business in the way that money in, money out. But we're obviously not selling anything.
I mean, I guess
we're selling the best product you can possibly buy, right?
And it's free.
That's right.
And it lasts forever.
Yeah,
that's right.
No rust.
That's right. So in that way, it's not. But the money side is important, and you guys know I mentioned this from the stage a couple weeks ago that there's 500 verses in the Bible, 500-ish on prayer. There's 500 verses or so on faith, and there's 2,300 verses on money throughout Scripture. So, man, it is. So I think that the Lord knew that would be a struggle for us, and it would be something that we really have to know about and have to know how to handle and have to know. And it's why a lot of divorces happen and a lot of people get into really tight binds, is because they don't know how to handle it. And so yeah, I've been very, very blessed to have guys that surround me where it's not falling on me, and they let me take that role of really focusing in on the pastoring and the shepherding and the preaching and stuff. That's amazing. That. So that's a true blessing for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point to and it's hard sometimes when you start on your own. For years you're going to have to put in that extra effort and kind of wear all the hats. I'm sure in the very beginning you wore way more hats than you do today.
For sure.
So I think delegation is something that's very important.
Yes.
Because ultimately, you don't need your pastor sitting there worrying about the QuickBooks every week. You don't need your pastor worrying about certain things. Just like the CEO of a company, when it gets to a certain point, don't need to be worried about certain things. He needs to be worried about moving the needle and position himself to be there. I guess one thing too, before we move on to the business side of things, when you're operating a church, I feel like a lot of the churches, you mentioned 2 out of 10 are the people that make it. Would you say that a lot of churches over leverage themselves and get into trouble? Do you think the finances play a part into why a lot of the plants don't work?
I think so. I think that I think a lot of it has yes, I think they move too quickly. Like, we needed to be in that school for 5 years.
Yeah.
We needed to be there because we weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
As bad as we wanted to be out of that, it would have ended up probably being detrimental to us, and it would have maybe potentially ruined us financially. And so what we were able to do instead of that was, as we grew, we were able to add a few more staff members, which does what you mentioned, and be able to where I'm not having to do all these things, because if I'm doing a million things, I'm not doing anything with excellence.
That's right.
I'm just doing a bunch of maybe good things, maybe some things very badly. And so I can hone in onto my skill set and what the Lord has asked me to do, and try to be as excellent as possible in those ways. And then I can bring in, my assistant, Rachel. I mentioned her a minute ago. Man, we call her the gatekeeper, because everything runs through her, and she's living within her skill set. Yep. And so, I think we're able to do that. So it's a priority thing as well, and I think that really applies business wise, instead of trying to get really big, really fast, work on getting better. You want me to tell that Truett Cathy story I told you?
Let's pause and then we'll jump into that.
Sounds good.
Real quick, guys, this is Rob with the Wheeling Agency. I just wanted to reach out to y'all. We've been in business a little over 3 years here in Paulding County. We take pride in serving our community, so next time you're in the need for some insurance, give us a call and reach out. Now get back to the show.
So cool that we kind of went here. That's kind of what I wanted to get into with that topic, because this morning we were just talking about, I don't even remember what brought it up this morning, but in our sauna session, he brought up this story of Truett Cathy, and they actually got the opportunity when you were at North Star to actually go to their facility. You rode in a elevator with Truett Cathy, which is really cool. Yeah. But tell us that story, because that would be so good for our audience to hear. Story.
Yeah, our whole staff was going through the hospitality training, which was really, really good for us, because they're really good at hospitality, obviously. Yeah. And so all the people, all of our staff except me and this other guy had gone up on this elevator, and we're waiting for the next elevator, and Truett comes walking up. And so that's my claim to fame, was 40 seconds in an elevator with Truett Cathy, which was pretty cool. But the guy, when we were there, the guy that was our host, had told us a story about this moment. And this is 15 years ago. Chick-fil-A was rolling, but not who they are today, certainly. And there was a moment where a lot of the board members were talking about expansion and building more stores and getting it out there and just rapidly going. And the story was that Truett just got all fed up and just kind of just said, enough. He said, we have got to get better before we get bigger. And he said, we cannot maintain what you're asking us to maintain, because we're not good enough to do that yet. And so that stuck with me for all these years, because that is just, I think, so many times in church and in business, you have this vision for where you want to go and what you want to do and where you want to be. And so you get going too fast and take on too much, and whatever it might look like, when you really, just for right now, you just need to be getting better. And you and I talked this morning about how, as a church, if our goal is to reach people, our goal is to train up people to follow Jesus. And if we don't have the right staff in place, the right systems in place, the right, if we're not doing that groundwork, then why is the Lord going to allow us why is he going to give us more people? Why is he going to entrust us with more, I should say, if we're not going to steward it very well? And so it's building that correct approach where we become better before we get bigger. For sure.
I like that.
And that's so true in the business world. Because we were kind of talking about, when we interviewed the people for Truth and Nature, it was very interesting for me that they didn't even visualize being in a different state. They were just like, we're going to be in Paulding County. We're going to get really good at being in Paulding County. And they got so good at doing what they were doing in Paulding County that people started reaching out to them for expansion. So it's such an interesting thing, because we were talking this morning. I think a lot of times we have a vision for the end game of what our business is going to look like. But with that vision, we don't want to go back to the small scale task and duties and all the things that will lead to you getting big. So you really got to hyper focus on getting better before you get bigger. Like, that's such a good model to follow, regardless if you're in church or regardless if you're in business.
Well, and that's why Major League Baseball players take infield every day, right?
Exactly.
Because they're working on their fundamentals, right? They have to keep working on the fundamentals in order to have success on the bigger scale.
That's so true. Right? God, that's so true.
Yeah, we only see that one little glimpse of the game and think, man, these guys are awesome.
That's right.
But we don't see all the hard work they're doing behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So, and I think it's a perspective thing. It's like a focus thing. Like if Truth and Nature had said, man, we want to build a nationwide ministry and we want to all this kind of stuff, then they lose the focus on the kids they're trying to help.
That's right.
On this. And so just by pulling in the focus and focusing on that, then the Lord gave them an opportunity to, hey, move into this state and all these chapters and all this kind of stuff. And it's because they were faithful in the little things, right? Faithful to do what the Lord had called them to do, that he expanded their borders and gave them more opportunity. It's really cool.
And there's such a big lesson to learn in that.
Yeah.
Do you have something? Oh, okay. I thought you had something.
No.
But I think with with what we're talking about here in the business world, I think it's so critical, and we wanted to pull out from our pastor so much, and I think you just said something that is actually going to lead us into kind of where I want the conversation to go with being a good steward. So we all in business worlds, we want success. We obviously, that's why we sign up to do what we do. But I think a lot of times what I've seen in my life is people with a lot of wealth that aren't very good stewards of their money. And we were talking the other day about how do you fix the problems that we have in this world? I mean, I think that we live in the greatest country that's ever been created, but there's still so many things that are, off about what's going on. And I was kind of talking to Brad about how do you think we fix it? And Brad said something that was so eye-opening to me. He said, the country and the government is never going to be able to do it. The church, that's what God put the church here for, is to help the needy, to help the sick.
Yes.
So talking about being a good steward, when you find success in business and when you find success from a personal level, I firmly believe, we've had people on here in the past, John Watkins talked a lot about tithing and everything. It's so critical that you support the churches, because this is another eye-opening thing. We have similar annual budgets in order to run our business. It's very similar in the number to what it takes to run our church, which is an interesting thing to think about, because earlier we said you're not selling like a tangible product, but yet your budget is very similar to
still have a budget,
a small business. It's so interesting to me. So with that being said, the church is solely dependent on people being good stewards of their finances. So walk me through kind of how that works from a business standpoint, because I really want our listeners to understand how important it is that you give back and that you give to the local church.
Yeah, I think that it's it involves education on my part as the pastor, and on our part as the elders of the church, certainly educating people on how this whole thing works, and it's so there's one side that's like an education thing, like you need to understand that just being a consumer of a church is not helpful. You might be getting a few things out of this, but you're just being a consumer, and so that's why we call our people, instead of we call them members, we call them partners, because members have privileges, partners lock arms and go after a common goal. That's what we say all the time. And so partners, if you're a partner in a place, in an organization, then you are fully committed, and you're giving what you, playing your role, playing your part. So I think there's part of it is education. Part of it is, to use a more Bible word, is discipleship, is helping people understand that this is God's plan for the church, is for me to grow. Is God's plan for me within the church is for me to grow in my faith, to develop understanding of the word, to serve people, whether it's within the church or outside in other ministries, to be a preacher of the gospel, to help people about Jesus. And part of this whole discipleship is giving as well. And that's just a key part of it. Like I said, there's all kinds of scripture all over the place about giving and about handling your money well. And so I think understanding that that's not an obligation. It's not, oh, you're a part of the church, 10%. Let's see it. That's
not a tax.
That's not
tax.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. It's the Lord wants us to live open-handed. He wants us to live generously. He wants us to live and to give cheerfully. And he wants us to understand that every single thing that we have comes from him.
Yes.
The job that I work, or not me because I work in the church, the business that you guys own and work at, the Lord gave that to you. And so giving back to him out of what he has given to you, you only have that because he gave it to you. And so living that joyful, free, cheerful life, open-handed, where you're not holding everything tight. You're like, I just got to get more. I just got to get more. I just got to hold it tight. What happens if, the economy craps out next year or whatever, that's a terrible way to live. And so living open-handed and saying, God, what is it? How do you want to use what you've given me? Because you truly have given it to me. I think so. There's There's an education standpoint. There's a discipleship standpoint. So that's two ways that those go together. I think
so good.
And he gives you the ability too. He gives you everything. The breath. Anything that we do in our life, our strong suits. If I'm good at this, and that's why our business is good, I'm only probably good at that because that's the talent that he gave me.
That's so true. Someone told me the other day that the human body is only designed to live for about 5 minutes, but then you breathe and that resets the clock. I thought that was actually pretty good. And because God gives you that breath, he gives you that ability to live 5 more minutes by taking that breath. And we just take it all for granted.
That's a wild perspective to think about.
Yeah,
and sure. I think it's not only just being faithful over your finances, but also faithful over, you said it was so good, it's like, it's not just the giving, it's your time. It's like what you choose to do with all of it. It's being a good steward of everything that you have. And I think that's just a good perspective that I would love for our audience to really hone in and put that as a priority, because I want things to happen in our country. I want our country to turn back to being a God-fearing nation who love each other and who, take care of one another. And that's why we were even talking about it the other day. So it was such an interesting perspective. The church is dependent on us being faithful in order for them to go out into the world and do the things that they got to do.
That's right. That's right.
And it's so important.
Yeah. It's not the government's job to take care of the poor. It's the church's job.
Yeah.
But we've been trained to trust the government in that area. And it's not. The Lord, it's again all over the Old Testament and the New Testament is to take care of the poor, to serve the widows, to serve the needy, serve the orphans. So if we did that as the church, if all people who are all believers, if we all gave like we should to the churches and the churches used it to serve the poor, there would be very little. We could knock out a lot more than the government could ever do.
Yeah. Be a Jesus Revolution.
That's right.
I just watched the movie, so
it's good.
I had to.
That's such a good movie.
It is.
It's legit.
I'm ready to start one, and I want to say something about Brad. Like, we've been going to the church with Brad, and he'll talk about meeting us and everything. But we've been going to the church for a little over a year now, and one thing that I see Brad do just so consistently is just he carries people's burdens well. And I see people every time we get done with church, there's like 3 people that come up and like say, hey, I'm going through this week. We're in a men's ministry thing right now. And 2 of the guys in there were like, man, I felt bad the other day because I had to call you and tell you my problem. And then the next guy was like, yeah, then I was right after him with a different problem. And Brad said, man, don't feel bad. That's my job. And so, dude, I just want to shout you out for that because you're so good at that. But, mentally being a pastor, and I know where your faith stands and everything, but mentally, how do you continue? I know you love people. I know you do. It's evident in the words you speak. It's evident in your behavior. But how do you just keep showing up over and over? Because that's what, as hard as it is, that's what we have to do for our employees every day. That's what we have to do for each other every day. And I know some days are easier to do that than others. And when things are operating super smoothly, it's like, oh, heck yeah, I love all you guys. Give me a big group hug. But then there's the times where you're ready to, you got to go home and pray for a minute because you're like, holy cow,
that's heavy.
There's $11 in the bank account and everything's going on.
I feel like it falls back to that ability thing we were talking about. Like that's the ability God gave him to be that way. He knew the way he wanted Brad to do, so he gave him the mindset that you need to be able to be positive all the time for everybody.
Yeah. I think so. I think you're absolutely right, Rob. That is true. That is a gift that the Lord that I celebrate for sure. I think that it's.
Did it come naturally to you, like from the age of 20? Like that's.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think I've always had a personality like that. So part of it is personality. Part of it is, I think part of it is understanding that when, those guys were both struggling. They were both, basically marriage issues, and to understand that. I'm not supporting them out of my strength. I'm not giving. They're not depending on my strength to help them through their marriage issue or whatever it is. It's 2 Corinthians 1. Actually, it's funny that you bring this up because I'm actually preaching on it on Sunday. 2 Corinthians 1 says that you have been comforted by God so that you can comfort other people. So the things that I've gone through in my life and the difficult times in my life are not for me. there so that I can be used in someone else's life. And that's not me. That's all of us. It's all of us who are believers. That is why you go through what you go through, so that you can give that to somebody else. And so I think understanding that these, during situations like that, where it's some heavy counseling stuff and just digging in with people, is I just got to keep pointing them to Christ.
Yeah.
I don't need to point them to the church. I don't need to point them to me. I need to point them to Christ, and all those other things, fall into place. So I think that's just the perspective that you got to operate in.
I love what you just said, because I was having a conversation the other day, and that's why we have to be so grateful for our stories.
Yeah.
And we talk about it, if I had grown up in Rob's household and basically born in 1989 and I was Rob, I would behave the exact same way that Rob does.
Yeah.
And so our stories create who we are, and our identities are wrapped up in these stories, but our stories are also, like you said, for others.
Yeah.
That's just a really good perspective. Thanks for sharing that.
If not, you bet. I mean, if not, then the minute we trusted Jesus, he just zipped us up to heaven. But he left us here as ambassadors, right? As people who are to then take that and to give the gift that we've been given, to make that available to other people too. So,
Dude, we got to clip that. That was good.
Yeah, that's
good stuff. But to catch everybody kind of up on the story of, we'll go back to kind of where we're at as a church and getting us into that story, because it's really cool. So I want to share this story of.
Okay.
You said you were paying $6,000 a month for the building. Was that your lease until?
Yeah, it was a 5-year lease. It increased $500 a month every year. Yeah.
So then at the end of that 5-year lease, was that when the option to actually purchase the building came about?
Yeah, it started right around then. Dollar General had moved out. And so now the owner of the building was trying to lease that out, and it went for about a year. So we actually ended up renting for about 6 years. So we just did it year by year after that. And so he's trying to rent that out, can't get it. So finally we had been talking to him about purchasing the whole building, because we needed that space, that Dollar General space, for student ministry, because our student ministry is just hopping,
booming,
and the staff has never worked together. We've all worked out of our homes for this whole time, and so we were wanting to build a little office area for the staff, and so we approached him about buying it, and he really likes his building, and so it was way too much. It was just ridiculous. But let me pause there. So about 3 years before, so after we were in the building for about 2 years, we kind of came to the church and said, hey, we don't know what's next for us. We're renting here. At some point, maybe we get to buy this building. Maybe the Lord wants to give us some land and we'll have to buy that and work on that and build a church somewhere else. We don't know. But we want to challenge you to start giving towards the future, which is it's pretty remarkable that our people are so giving, because it's like, hey, I got nothing for you. Would you give to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't know what's going to happen.
I have no idea where we're going.
Yeah, that's right. But go ahead and give to it. Yeah, just trust me.
Yeah.
But yeah, they responded, and so over those 3 years, they had given. I want to make sure I say these numbers right, because it matters for the end of the story. $180,000, okay, was in the bank for whatever's next. So we start talking to this owner about buying, and he agrees to finally buy at the amount that we felt comfortable with and felt like we were getting a good deal. But the problem was, we go through the financing, because there'll be a mortgage on it, and the financing comes back where we need $450,000 down payment. And so we're like, well, I don't know what to do here, because we don't got $450,000 and it's going to be a long time before we have that. So we're like, Lord, what do we do here? We don't even know what to do. We feel like you have planted us here. We love this community. This is where the longer the church has gone, the more concentrated around the church that our people have become, as far as like where they live. And so we feel like we want to be here. And so it was right around that time that COVID hit, and we shut down. We shut down a lot shorter than a lot of people did. We had opened back up the end of June, actually, of that year. And because our people were just screaming for it, they're like, we need to meet together. So we were online there for a little bit. So during that, so right around the time that we were opening back up, I got a call from a guy, and he said, hey, you don't know me. We, over these last couple months, have been watching online, and we love it. And we plan on joining you at some point when you guys open back up and all that kind of stuff. We plan on being there and being a part of the church. And I was like, awesome, that's great. And he said, would you come by the house? I'd just like to introduce you. I'd just like my family to meet you, et cetera, and just talk for a little bit. I said, sure. So I went by there and meet them and talk with them and all that kind of stuff. It was a cool evening. And then he says, well, I've got something for you. And he hands me a check. And the check, I look down at the check, and it's $300,000. Wow. And I'm just, I'm all shaken, and I'm like, what? I'm like hyperventilating. I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. I don't understand this.
Like, did you mean to do this?
That's right. Did you
put
write
one
it
too?
correct?
You put a couple too many zeros, but
what had happened was his mom had worked for this company for 50 years, had gotten all this stock as part of her salary, and she had retired, and so they cashed her out, and she had gotten $10 million in stock. And so she wanted to give 10% of it away. So she gave $1 million of it away. And he's telling me, he says, man, it was a blast. So sit down, and who else can we give? What other ministries can we give to? And what other churches can we give to? And she had been watching with them during the pandemic. And so she wanted to give us some. And she said, how about $100,000? And he said, Mom, let's really make a difference. Let's make it 3. And she said, okay. So, God, y'all.
What was that car ride home like?
Oh, I called Angie immediately because I was like, you're not going to believe this. And then I started calling through the elders and saying, this is what just happened. And, it was incredible.
So this is all about the same time when all this is coming up with the building.
So we need 450.
Yeah.
We got 180, 300.
Gave away
10%.
Mm-hmm.
Leaves 270, and 180 is 450. Here you go. Building's ours.
Gave 10%.
JEJIT.
Good.
And then we got to give $30,000 away to people.
Yeah.
Which was cool, and to ministries and to we have some churches over in Africa that we've started. We got to just build some buildings over there and bless them over there. And it's just so cool. You just sit back and go, okay, Lord. All this, I can try to put my hands around things. I can try to manipulate them. I can try to make things happen. Nothing happens unless you are in it. And I just want to trust you that you're in it. And you're just going to give us what you want to give us when you want to give it to us.
There's no doubt Vertical Life Church isn't supposed to be a New Hope.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think we've referenced the scripture a couple times, but my version is, if you're faithful over a little, I'll make you ruler over much.
Yeah.
And it just hearing the story, because I've heard the story, time and time again, and every time it just gives me goosebumps. But hearing it laid out the way we've laid it out today, think about that moment when the bill was due for $6,300 and how that happened, and y'all were faithful over a little, and then
this happens.
This happens, and it's you were faithful over much.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you ruler over much because you were faithful over this little blessing I gave you.
Yeah.
Now I see the need. And isn't it cool how he shows up?
Yeah.
Right on time.
He does.
Time and time again, he shows up right on time.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so cool, and that just fires you up for what's happening at Vertical Life Church.
Right.
I've been so fortunate. I'm so thankful that Alex went to Costco that day, because I've said it many times. It changed my life.
Yeah.
And Alex is, just him being faithful that day and doing what God told him to do has led to so much in my life. And I've been very fortunate to be a small part of our youth ministry. And like you said, it is absolutely exploding right now. Yeah. And it's so fun to just see our kids grow in their faith and serve and to be the true hands and feet. I think there's a movement happening with that age group. They are desiring, Christ every day. They're worshiping. They're moving the needle in our church so much. It's an interesting stat. 63% of our church is is that right?
Under 20.
Under 20.
Yeah.
63% of our church
crazy.
are under the age of 20. And that's amazing.
Yes, it
so I just want to shout out our church, and if you are in this area, please check us out. We're in New Hope, and
what's the address? Come visit if you guys are looking for a new church home, man.
Yeah.
What's that?
verticallifechurch.net.
Vertical Life Church. It's on East Paulding Drive.
Yep. Right by Publix.
Right by Publix.
Yeah.
I knew that, but I don't know the I
guess
the numbers.
I could let you say that. Across the street from the farmer's office.
But yeah, I mean, I think I love the story, and I think we can apply so much. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because I think what we're talking about here, if the world could really put their faith in Christ in every area of their life. We said it earlier, but guys, in your business, if you're working for somebody, whatever, man, trust God. Let this story be your story. It's just going to be a little different, but just trust in Him. Take everything to Him and let Him guide you when you're ready. There's a lot that we could dissect from this whole story of patience, overcoming adversity time and time again, and trusting. And, for us, we said it earlier, your faith just goes stronger and stronger as time passes when you're trusting in Him to provide everything. So, I mean, dude, I think you crushed it. I think the story's great. Do y'all have anything else?
For sure, yeah. There's two more things. I just want to say that, I had a friend pass away, and I picked up a Bible for the first time in November of 2019. And I just want to say that there is not one bit of me that regrets doing that. And so no matter where you're at, if you get in that position or if you're just thinking about maybe picking it up, dude, just freaking do it.
Yeah.
Because it will change your life.
Start in the book of John. Just start reading, because that's all about Jesus and all about who He is and what he did. And I think that's for a rookie. Yeah. I mean, you started in Genesis. You started at the very beginning, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I
needed
people,
to.
I think starting in John, because you is a great place to start.
And then the only other thing I wanted you to say, Brent had touched on that day we met at Costco.
Yeah.
And I just want to hear that story from your perspective. Do you remember that day? Like,
vividly.
You vividly?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And a year and a half or whatever it is.
It was January probably of 2022.
Yeah.
Probably
Let's hear
January.
your perspective on that.
Then we go to Rodney's barbecue. Was that like
that? Me and Rob went to breakfast with you.
Yeah.
Like, I literally said, like, hey, good to meet you. Come talk to this guy. Here's my insurance card. Let me quote you.
Then he called me and said, hey, we're going to eat breakfast, or I'm going to eat breakfast with this pastor that I met at Costco. Yeah. Do you want to go? It's at Rodney's barbecue. And I was like, you had me at breakfast. So let's go.
Yeah. So I'm just standing there at the snack bar where you are. And, Alex at this point has like this big old,
I decided to,
spirit, dude.
I was in the thing. I wasn't going to shave my beard for a year. And
we were like, naked and afraid. That's what the one guy,
dude, that is what he said at church. But, we were probably about 8 months in and not shaving for a year.
So I hear him say to what I find out is Colby, your brother. He says, hey, you go talk to 3 people and I'll buy you a hot dog.
Oh,
that's what I remember you saying. I heard you on the podcast a couple weeks ago say it a little bit differently. That's my perspective. Obviously, our perspectives are different. If I'm right or you're right. But so Colby comes over to me and introduces himself, and then walks off to go find 2 other guys. And right then, I'm like turning to you, and I said, "What was that about?" and that started our conversation. I had my Dominion Christian shirt on, and you commented on that on the night. What is that, et cetera? Because I'm a coach over there. So anyway, so you gave me your card. Said I'd love to quote you. Sure, I'm always open to saving money, right? Why not? And so we got in contact this next week. I just sent you an email on your card and said, hey man, really good to meet you, because you had told me where your office was, which is literally across the street from the church.
Yeah.
And so it's great to meet you. And so you wrote back, so let's go grab some breakfast. So the 3 of us go, me and you, Rob, and we're sitting there, and we start talking about your story, and you tell me about reading the Bible and how you trusted Jesus after all that, just simply reading the Bible, which is so cool. And so I was like, so where do you go to church? You said Elevation, and I'm like, that's in North Carolina, Elevation, North Carolina. Like, yeah.
That's hilarious.
I know that you and Brittany were looking, or it was time to get into a church. And so you had not been baptized. Mm-hmm. And so you said,
I asked, yeah.
You said, yeah, I've been going to this church online, but I don't think Stephen Furtick's going to baptize me, is what you said, the pastor over there, because he's there. And he said, I remember you asking, do you baptize people? And I was like, heck yeah. And so you came by the next little bit. And I think, were you there for his baptism?
Both of
them,
you were there. It was about a month later.
Before I even met you.
Yeah. It was about a month later.
Yeah. You're all your family and everything. That was so cool. And then just, I think slowly after that, then we got to just kind of, you guys just kind of stepped in and started being a part of the church.
It was Carson for us. It was when you called and
bro, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple months later, yeah, I mean it's all I don't know if we're running out of time or not, but I'll just keep talking until you tell me to shut up.
Yeah.
So my son at that point had graduated high school the May before, and had done a semester at KSU, and halfway through the semester, he says, "Dad, I hate this. I'm sitting in psychology and I'm paying for it. Why?" And he's a smart kid. I mean, he easily made A's all through high school. And so it wasn't that, it was just, he just didn't like it. And I was like, okay, well, give me another option. And he said, well, I've always wondered about real estate, see if real estate is something I'd be interested in. I was like, okay, well, why don't you next semester, take a real estate, get your certification. Let's keep you enrolled in a class so you don't lose your hope and all that kind of your hope scholarship and all that stuff. And so he did. So then we meet, all that happens. And I know that you guys do real estate and insurance. So I said, hey, Carson, let's go talk to Alex about what he does. And if real estate is like day to day, what it looks like and all that stuff. And so that led him to come on, be hired by you guys. He got his real estate license. He got all his insurance stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
now he's working, full time with you. He's, 20 years old and he's doing all that stuff with you. And so as much as I know you guys said, as much as you have benefited from being a part of the church and stuff, I have benefited in my family from our relationship with you guys and the way that you have poured into my son.
Yeah.
And his guys that he brought on with you. And so it's just a great story, man.
It really is.
And just all coming together.
And if you do actually listen to these things, Carson, you're a stone cold stud. But really, I mean, it's how you fathered him and how he was that attracted me and Brent. Were just like, dude, I know that you went to that church once and got baptized. Which, by the way, how little did I know about churches? Do you baptize people? Ask the pastor that. Yeah. Now that I know I said that, I feel like an idiot.
I was laughing that day inside. I'm like, bro, you just said that.
Yeah, I was like, But how you fathered Carson got Brent and I just like, wow, look at this kid. I mean, he is 19, 20 years old. And I just kind of told you a little off air what I did as a 19-year-old. And it's like, whoa, what is happening here?
Right. Yeah, I think one week I was like, bro, I love Carson and like just his mindset and everything. We got to go check this church out.
Yeah, Brent did say that, and that's why we went, because I was like,
that's cool. I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, literally.
That's awesome.
I was like, yeah, he baptized me, but like I gave all my money to Elevation. Like, what do we do? But it was, now that we do go in person and stuff, it's a no-brainer, man. You get the real connection, the community, the men's ministry, the stuff we get to be a part of.
We're called to come together.
It's so true.
Yep.
So.
What a cool story. And it's a blessing. I'm just thankful. It's hard to believe it's only been a year. I can't wait to see what God, uses. Our church is on fire. I can't wait to see what God continues to do there. It's been, 13 years now?
It's been 11 plus.
11 plus years. 11 plus. So we've got, we're only a small time, but I'm so excited for the future.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful you came on today, man.
Awesome.
For sure.
Blessing.
Man,
thanks,
it's been
brother.
An honor. Thanks for having me. Let's do this every week.
Let's do it.
I'm free.
Every Thursday. All right.